Bombshell alert in Minnesota, Viking Nation. The storm starts right now with a revelation no one saw coming. Listen closely, because what's about to unfold in the next few minutes could shake the very foundation of this franchise's playoff hopes and redefine the entire trajectory of the 2025 season. We've got 5 seismic updates dropping today, and every single one of them cuts deep into the heart of purple and gold territory. First, a critical resource the front office was banking on just got slashed, threatening the future draft capital that could make or break this roster. Second, a star running back and an all-pro tackle are fighting through pain on a short week, and their status for tonight's primetime battle is hanging by a thread. Third, a receiver who's been absolutely on fire is about to light up prime time in ways the Chargers aren't ready for. Fourth, whispers of a reunion with a former franchise quarterback are swirling again, and the rumor mill is reaching a fever pitch that's dividing the fan base right down the middle. At fifth, the offensive line might be in complete shambles heading into Thursday Night Football, putting Carson Wentz and the entire offense in serious jeopardy. This isn't just news, this is chaos, hope, heartbreak, and fire all rolled into one explosive package. If you bleed purple, you need to hear every word of what's coming next, because the next revelation is about to detonate inside US Bank Stadium. But hold on, before we even get to tonight's game, there's a bombshell brewing in the front office that's been flying under the radar. And it's the kind of news that might not grab headlines today, but will absolutely haunt this franchise in April when the draft rolls around. You ready for this? Because what I'm about to tell you is going to make you question everything Aficionados has been planning for the future. The Vikings just saw a massive bite taken out of their compensatory draft pick projections, and the culprit, a player nobody expected to wreck the formula, Eric Wilson. That's right, the veteran linebacker who was brought back as a depth piece has now become a full-time starter. And while that's great news for Brian Flores' defense, it's a nightmare for the draft capital Minnesota was counting on to rebuild this roster in 2026. Compensatory picks are awarded to teams that lose more valuable free agents than they sign. And heading into this season, the Vikings were projected to land around 3 compensatory picks, maybe even 4 if things broke right. That would have been huge for a front office that's been masterful at finding talent in the middle rounds. But here's where it gets ugly. Eric Wilson has played so well filling in for the injured Blake Cashman that he's now a full-time starter, and his snap count is high enough to cancel out one of the Vikings' projected compensatory picks for losing Daniel Jones in free agency. Nick Court from Over the Cap recently updated his formula and confirmed that Wilson's playing time is wiping out one of Minnesota's expected picks. The Vikings are now looking at just one lonely compensatory selection, and that's the 3rd rounder they'll get for losing Sam Darnold to Seattle. Darnold signed a massive 3-year, $100 million deal with the Seahawks, and thank God for that, because without that contract, the Vikings would be staring at almost nothing. In compensatory picks for 2026, think about what this means. Aficionados built his entire offseason strategy around letting high-priced veterans walk, bringing in cheaper replacements, and stockpiling draft picks to keep the roster young and cost-controlled. It's a smart plan in theory, but it only works if those cheap replacements don't play enough snaps to cancel out the formula. Wilson was supposed to be a depth guy, but when Cashman went down in Week 1, Wilson stepped in and played so well that even when Cashman came back in Week 7, Brian Flores decided to keep Wilson on the field and bench Ivan Pace Jr. instead. That's a testament to Wilson's talent, but from a draft capital perspective, it's a disaster. The Vikings were counting on those extra picks to add young talent on rookie contracts, especially with a salary cap situation in 2026 that's projected to be downright ugly. Now they're looking at one compensatory 3rd rounder, and that's it. The good news is that the season isn't over yet, and there's still a chance that Wilson's snap count could decrease. But with the way he's been playing, that seems unlikely. He's been a tackling machine and a key reason why Minnesota's run defense has stayed respectable, despite all the injuries. So what's the answer? Do the Vikings bench a productive player just to save a draft pick? Absolutely not. You play the best players, period. But it doesn't make the loss any less painful, especially when you consider that the Vikings could have used that extra pick to address glaring needs at cornerback, safety, or along the offensive line. If you believe in the Vikings front office more than you hate the Packers, smash that subscribe button right now, because we're about to dive into the injury chaos that's threatening to derail tonight's game. against the Chargers. And just when fans thought it couldn't get crazier, here comes the next bombshell. Stay with me, because what comes next will flip the script in ways nobody predicted. We're talking about a situation that could completely change the outcome of tonight's Thursday Night Football showdown. And it all comes down to three names: Aaron Jones, Christian Darrisaw, and Brian O'Neill. These are three of the most important players on Minnesota's offense. And heading into tonight's game, all three are listed as questionable. Let's start with Christian Darrisaw, because his situation is the most concerning. Darrisaw wasn't on the injury report Monday or Tuesday, but then on Wednesday, out of nowhere, he showed up with a knee injury, according to Ian Rappaport from NFL Network. Darrisaw has been dealing with significant pain in his surgically repaired left knee. That's not the kind of language you want to hear about your franchise left tackle, especially on a short week. Rappaport said the Vikings are going to examine Darrisaw today and possibly put him through a pregame workout to see if he's healthy enough to play. Darrisaw played 69 snaps against the Eagles last week and felt discomfort afterward. If Darrisaw can't go, the Vikings will likely turn to Justin Skule at left tackle, and while Skule is capable, he's not Christian Darrisaw. Darrisaw is one of the best left tackles in the NFL, and replacing him with Skule against the Chargers pass rush featuring Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack is terrifying. Carson Wentz is not a mobile quarterback, and he's been taking a beating. And if the Vikings start Skule, you can bet the Chargers will attack that side relentlessly. Now let's talk about Brian O'Neill, who's also questionable with a knee injury. O'Neill has been dealing with a sprained MCL that kept him out in Week 5, but he played last week, so there's optimism he'll gut it out tonight. Still, if he can't go, the Vikings would have to start Walter Rouse at right tackle, meaning Minnesota is fielding a makeshift offensive line on both sides. The good news is that Aaron Jones might actually be ready to return. Jones has been out since Week 2 with a hamstring strain, and according to Rappaport, Jones has a real chance of being activated from injured reserve in time for tonight's game. That would be huge for Minnesota's offense, which has been relying on Jordan Mason and Cam Akers. Jones is a legitimate home run threat every time he touches the ball, and getting him back would give Kevin O'Connell's offense a much-needed boost. But here's the thing, even if Jones is activated, how much are the Vikings really going to use him on a short week coming off a hamstring injury? The smart move would be to ease him back, maybe give him 10 to 15 carries. But the Vikings might not have that luxury. This is a critical game, and Minnesota desperately needs a win to keep pace in the NFC North. So do the Vikings roll the dice and give Jones a full workload, or do they play it safe? If Jones and Darrisaw both sit, and O'Neill is limited, the Vikings are going to be down three of their most important offensive players against a hungry Chargers team. If you're praying for Darrisaw and Jones to suit up tonight, drop a comment, because the next story is going to give you something to smile about. But that's not the only fire burning inside this franchise. The next revelation is even more explosive. And listen, the next chapter is the kind of news that might actually give Viking Nation some hope. In the middle of all this chaos, I'm talking about Jordan Addison, the second-year wide receiver who's been absolutely lighting it up since returning from his 3-game suspension. Addison missed the first 3 games due to off-field issues, and when he came back, there were questions about whether he'd regain his form. Well, those questions have been answered emphatically. In the 3 games Addison has played this season, he's put up receiving totals of 114 yards, 41 yards, and 128 yards. That 41-yard game against the Browns in London needs context, because Addison was benched for the first quarter by Kevin O'Connell for missing a walkthrough. So he only played 3 quarters, and even in limited action, he still caught the game-winning touchdown from Carson Wentz. If Addison had played the full game, he would have blown past 60 yards. Addison has been unstoppable when he's on the field, and tonight against the Chargers, all signs point to another massive performance. The Chargers have the 8th best pass defense in the NFL, allowing just 190.3 yards per game. But last week against the Colts, they gave up big games to 3 different receivers. Alec Pierce caught 5 passes for 98 yards. Tyler Warren had 4 catches for 69 yards and a touchdown. And Michael Pittman hauled in 7 receptions for 58 yards and a score. That's 3 receivers going over 55 yards against a supposedly elite defense. The key difference is that Minnesota has Justin Jefferson, which means the Chargers can't just load up on Addison. Jefferson is going to command double teams on every snap. leaving Addison in one-on-one matchups all night. And when Addison gets one-on-one matchups, he wins. He's got elite route running, explosive speed, and some of the best hands in the league. The connection between Wentz and Addison has been impressive, and it's clear Wentz trusts him in critical situations. Last week against the Eagles, Addison should have had an even bigger game, but Wentz underthrew him on a deep ball that would have been a touchdown. Now, let's talk about the betting line. Addison's over-under for receiving yards tonight is set at 55.5 yards. That feels way too low given what we've seen. He's gone over 100 yards in 2 of his 3 games, and the one game where he didn't was when he only played 3 quarters. The man is averaging close to 95 yards per game. This is the perfect storm for Addison to have a breakout performance on national television. And if the Vikings get Aaron Jones back, that's going to open up even more space for Addison because the Chargers will have to respect the run game. This kid has been electric, and he's proving he's not just a complimentary piece to Justin Jefferson. He's a legitimate WR1 talent in his own right. If the Vikings are going to pull off an upset tonight, they need Addison to show up big. If you believe Jordan Addison is going to torch the Chargers tonight, drop a like, because the next story is going to get the entire fan base talking. But trust me, the story only gets darker from here. The next twist will leave you speechless. Hold on tight, because what I'm about to tell you is going to divide Viking Nation right down the middle. We're talking about Kirk Cousins and the possibility of a reunion with the Minnesota Vikings. With the trade deadline less than 2 weeks away and Carson Wentz struggling, the media is once again floating the idea of bringing Cousins back. Jeremy Fowler from ESPN recently ranked the top 25 trade candidates, and Cousins made the list. Fowler gave it a 20% chance, which means it's not likely, but it's also not impossible. Fowler noted that Cousins is 37 years old and threw 16 interceptions last year, but he also pointed out that Cousins could help a team in distress. Fowler specifically mentioned the Vikings as a potential destination, citing Wentz's struggles and the fact that J.J. McCarthy is expected to return soon. Fowler called it a convenient talking point for fans and media, and he's absolutely right. This is the kind of story that gets clicks, but when you dig into the details, it makes almost no sense. Let's start with the most obvious problem, Cousins' contract. He's making a boatload of money this season, and he is $10 million guaranteed in 2026. The Vikings are already projected to be in a tight salary cap situation, and taking on Cousins' contract would make things worse. Minnesota didn't let Cousins walk just to bring him back at an even higher price. Then there's performance. Cousins is not the same quarterback he was before tearing his Achilles in 2023. Last season, in 14 games, Cousins threw for 3,508 yards, 18 touchdowns, and 16 interceptions. Compare that to Carson Wentz, who in 4 games is averaging 168 yards per game with a 66.9% completion rate. Those are almost identical numbers to Cousins, except Wentz is making $26 million less and doesn't have guaranteed money next season. So if the Vikings are going to roll with a veteran, why would they pay a premium for Cousins when they can get similar production from Wentz at a fraction of the cost? And let's not forget about J.J. McCarthy. The Vikings drafted McCarthy in the first round specifically to be their franchise quarterback. He's been sidelined with an ankle injury since week 4, but Kevin O'Connell has hinted McCarthy could be back as soon as next week. The entire plan is to build around McCarthy and let him develop on a rookie contract. Bringing back Cousins would completely undermine that plan and send a message that the organization doesn't have faith in McCarthy. So why is this rumor even a thing? Because the media loves a good storyline. The idea of Cousins returning to Minnesota is too juicy to resist, but at the end of the day, it's nothing more than a convenient talking point. The Vikings made their decision when they let Cousins walk, and they doubled down when they drafted McCarthy. There's no going back now. Cousins had 6 great years in Minnesota, and he'll always be remembered as one of the better quarterbacks in franchise history. But his time with the Vikings is over. This team is moving forward, not backward. If you're tired of hearing about Kirk Cousins and ready to see J.J. McCarthy take over, smash that subscribe button, because the final story is going to make you question whether this offense can even function tonight. And if you think that was wild, the second story might just redefine everything you thought you knew. But the night isn't over, because the next headline is pure shock. We've talked about draft picks, injuries, breakout performances, and trade rumors. But now we need to address the elephant in the room, the Minnesota Vikings offensive line. might be in complete shambles tonight. Let me paint the picture. Christian Darrisaw, the franchise left tackle, is dealing with significant knee pain and might not play. Brian O'Neill, the right tackle, is questionable with an MCL sprain. And Ryan Kelly, the big free agent signing at center, has been on injured reserve since the start after suffering to concussions. That's 3 of the 5-starting offensive linemen either out or questionable. If both Darrisaw and O'Neill can't go tonight, the Vikings are going to trot out a makeshift line that looks absolutely terrifying. Here's what the lineup could look like in the worst-case scenario. Justin Skull at left tackle, Donovan Jackson at left guard, Blake Brandel or Michael Juergens at center, while Fries at right guard and Walter Rouse at right tackle. That's a line with 3 backups and the guys who would normally be depth pieces. Facing the Chargers pass rush featuring Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, and a defensive coordinator who loves to dial up pressure. This is a nightmare for Carson Wentz, who's not the most mobile quarterback and has been getting hit way too much in recent weeks. Kevin Seifert from ESPN reported Wednesday night that Darrisaw needed treatment on his knee after playing 69 snaps against the Eagles. And while there are no major concerns, there are no guarantees he'll recover quickly on a short week. The Vikings are being cautious, which is the right approach given how important Darrisaw is. But it also means there's a very real possibility he sits tonight. And if Darrisaw sits, the Chargers are going to attack Justin Skull relentlessly. Skull is solid, but he's not in the same stratosphere as Darrisaw. Expect to see Khalil Mack line up over Skull's side on every passing down. The same goes for Brian O'Neill. If he can't go or is limited, the Vikings will lean on Walter Rouse, a young tackle with limited starting experience. The good news is that Aaron Jones might be back, and having a dynamic running back could take some pressure off the offensive line. Jones is one of the best pass-catching backs in the league, and he can help Wentz get the ball out quickly on screens and checkdowns. But even with Jones back, the Vikings are going to have their hands full. The smart move, from a long-term perspective, would be to hold Darrisaw and O'Neill out and give them an extra 10 days to heal before the next game against the Lions. The Lions game is massive for playoff hopes, and having them healthy for that matchup is way more important than rushing them back for a Thursday night road game. But the problem is, the Vikings can't afford to punt on tonight either. They're sitting at 3-3, and they need wins to stay in the playoff hunt. So what do the Vikings do? Roll the dice and play their injured stars, or play it safe and hope a makeshift line can hold up for one night? It's a lose-lose situation. One thing's for sure, if the offensive line gets dominated tonight, and Wentz spends the entire game running for his life, this is going to be a long, painful night for Viking Nation. And if this week felt like an earthquake, what's coming next could be the aftershock that topples the whole season. The Lions are sitting at 4-2 and waiting for Minnesota to slip up. The Packers are lurking, and the Bears are building something dangerous. The Vikings are running out of time to figure things out, and every game from here on out is a must-win. Tonight's game is just the beginning of a brutal stretch that includes the Lions, Bears, and Packers all before Thanksgiving. So buckle up, Viking Nation, because the ride is only getting bumpier. If you believe in this team, if you believe in Kevin O'Connell, if you believe that Jordan Addison is going to light up the Chargers, and Aaron Jones is going to make his triumphant return, then hit that like button, drop a